Hi, and welcome to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, Parenting Insights from Pediatrician Moms. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank.
And I'm Dr. Vivian Carlin. Welcome back. Today, we are going to talk about school discipline and what happens when your child faces something that involves school discipline. So I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion. And I do not know your stories, Sylvia, and I'm excited to hear them because maybe it'll make me feel a little bit more validated that I am actually an okay parent, despite the fact that I have been called by schools multiple times.
Right. Well, I also have been called by the school as well, so I can't wait to share stories. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the 10 Kids, 2 Docs podcast. Seasoned pediatricians and longtime friends, Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin have counseled thousands of parents and are raising 4 and 6 kids, respectively. Join these doctor moms as they incorporate fun and their combined wisdom and experience to share parenting insights for anyone looking for practical and trustworthy guidance. Please note that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor.
Sylvia, I really want to hear your stories. Did you get any detentions growing up?
Oh, I did.
You did?
Yes, I did.
Multiple?
I got detention and I was also suspended from school.
What? No way. Oh my gosh, you have to tell me.
Okay, so I had detention in high school because we weren't allowed to chew gum in school.
Oh,
This is
and totally an example of that 80s perspective, right?
Right. And I was chewing gum and I got detention one day. That's not a big deal. But the suspension story is the good story.
Oh,
So
my gosh.
I was suspended in middle school.
Oh my gosh.
In 7th grade, we had a special assembly for Martin Luther King Day. And it was a musical performance of some semi-professional or adults coming in to sing. And it was a special event for the school. And all I remember is that throughout the entire assembly, I was sitting next to my best friend and we were literally talking the whole time, right?
Wow, you got suspended for this.
Okay. And I guess the teachers administration, I'm sure it was disrespectful. I'm not saying I wasn't.
Yeah.
And they didn't give me a warning. Towards the end of the assembly, they pulled me and my friend and the poor guy sitting next to us who wasn't even talking and dragged us to the principal's office where we were told that we were disrespectful and that we were suspended from school and we couldn't ride the bus home and our parents had to pick us up. So
wow.
My parents are first generation immigrants. They don't know what this is. And they worked in the city. They were far. I remember staying in the principal's office for some time that evening before my parents could come and get me.
Wow.
And so I was suspended. My friend was suspended. And that poor boy sitting next to us was also suspended.
So you were suspended for one day, the next day?
Yes, but I didn't realize what suspension was, and neither did my parents. So I actually went to school the next day.
Oh, that's so cute.
And then they pulled me out of second period and then sat me in the office because I wasn't supposed to be there. And then that was it.
Okay, so you basically got an in-school suspension before that was a thing.
Because my parents didn't realize that they were supposed to keep me home from school.
That's really cute because nobody in your family history had ever experienced school discipline. So
right. They're like, what is this? And I think the one thing my parents made sure that it wasn't on my permanent record.
Yeah.
Right. What about you? Were you ever detention or suspended?
I got detention one time. I was in 7th grade. I was in art class. It was at the end of the day and we were packing up and the teacher was telling us to be quiet. And I was talking to one of my table mates and she called out in front of the whole class for me to stop. And right then and there told me I would have detention the next day. And I can even create the physical feeling inside of me now talking about that. I am sure I was horrified. I'm sure I turned all shades of red. I was devastated by this, right? And I actually don't think that's healthy. And it wasn't that I had strict parents or anything like that. I mean, I really think it was just this internal thing about me that's kind of type A, oldest child. There was something about that where I was just driven to this almost sense of perfection as far as academics and behavior and everything else, to the point that would inhibit me from talking very much, right? I was very shy. The reason I say all that is because as a parent as I've had to vicariously experience school discipline through some of my children, I recognize that this could actually be divisive between me and my children because we were so different in this, right?
Oh, I see
Like
that.
that it could be a potential parent-child mismatch
Mm,
that if I were not more astute or maybe not a pediatrician, I might not recognize as often a very normal part of development.
yes.
So I won't tell you or the listeners how many times I've been called by a school, but I will say this. I mean, I have 6 children. I have 3 that have had some type of school discipline. And it's funny because I think it's very predictable in my mind who it would be and why.
Yeah.
And the things, honestly, in some of the scenarios, I appreciate that the things that lead them to be more likely to have some kind of school discipline, I actually think are aspects of their personality that may go on to serve them very well in life,
Hmm.
right? All 3 of these children are pretty extroverted, but I think of 2 in general that are very extroverted. And I remember one of the elementary teachers for one of these children describing this child and saying, "I love your child is very socially free." That's how
Hmm.
how the teacher put it. She was like, "This child is friends with everyone in the class. They don't think about cliques or groups or whatever. They're friends with everybody. They talk to everybody, and it's so refreshing to see that." And I think because of that, this drive to like interact with people, to laugh with people or whatever, it's a great thing when you're hanging out with your friends on the playground. It's not a great thing when you have to like sit in class quietly, right?
Right.
So I feel like there's this predictability to some extent in personality where that
Yeah.
has matched my children and their school and
Right.
their school discipline, which has mostly been getting called about detentions.
So, that's funny that you should say that because my story of my suspension was also an extroversion story, right?
Yes,
Like
yeah, yes.
I'm talking too much. I'm socializing too much at a time that's inappropriate. And this is a scenario where you can be punished, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any stories to share?
I do have my absolute funniest story about being called by a school. And thankfully it didn't result in any school discipline, but it's along the lines of why this child had a couple of detentions along the way. When my child was in middle school, one of his teachers was very new to teaching. This was her first year teaching this particular class, and she had only been teaching in general for a couple of years. So super new, enthusiastic. And I see the school number come up on the phone. And of course, I always answer it. And she is like so kind and so sweet. And she's like, tells me she wants to talk to me about my child and that, there's all these things she really likes about him. She's doing this really, really well. And then she, in this like kind of like tone where she clearly does not know how to ask me this question, she explains to me that she is starting to think that my child has a skill for passing gas in a loud way to make the entire class laugh.
like purposefully.
Yes, yes. I mean, she talks about how like when it first happened, she was very much trying to minimize it and was like, guys, like everybody does this.
Right.
We
Like trying to,
don't need to laugh. She's
right.
trying
No
to like help him
embarrassment. Right.
out. Right,
Right.
right. And then over time, she starts to think that he actually is doing it like on command, so to speak, at moments that he thinks he will get the biggest laugh. And Sylvia, I mean, thank goodness it was a phone call and not in person. I was so embarrassed. Like that phone call was like,
So were they like, I'm going to give him detention, or I think I would like you to talk to him about it?
that's a good
Like,
point. Well,
what was her plan?
I responded to her with, if it gets out of hand, please escalate and
Right.
send him
Right.
out of the room, send him down to the principal, whatever you need to do. You have my permission. And I will just talk to him, as I have many times before, about trying to keep his comedic side in check when he is sitting in class. I want to make a point about that child, because as I've told this story, I've kind of described his personality, and he just, he's very outgoing. He talks to people all the time. He loves to make people laugh. And I have such a tremendous respect for that.
Right.
And honestly, there's a tiny, tiny little part of me that looks back on who I was in middle school and is slightly jealous. Like
Yeah.
I wish I had been that socially free in middle school
Mm,
to really like let my personality come out more. And
yeah.
so I love that about him. So I'm very careful that I don't want a detention or getting called to the principal's office to somehow define him. You've been like this forever. And this actually is one of the best things about who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the amount of joy it brings our family because of your personality is something that I will tolerate a handful of school discipline for this, right? But like there is a line. I never ever want you to be disrespectful. I
Right.
always want you to be apologetic. I want you to be trying. And I know at your age, it's just going to take a little bit of time for that better self-control to come in.
It's a balance to strike as a parent, right? You don't want to punish their originality, right? But then again, you want them to be able to somewhat conform, and you feel for the teacher trying to like lead this whole class. You want your child to be cooperative too,
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it's this parental balance that you have to strike, right?
it is. It is.
So there's other characteristics that lead to detention too.
I have another one who has had a couple of incidents with school, and it's more related to like impulsivity,
Mhm.
poor decision making in that elementary age, being very very susceptible to idea suggestion by friends, and kind of like doing something against the rules because a friend group was doing it, and I'm so impulsive and we're having so much fun and I'm not even thinking about that.
Right.
And that's like another very different scenario, but of understanding your child and understanding, oh, those maturing mechanisms aren't in there yet, but I still
Yeah.
see the good in you. I know your
Yeah.
good intentions. I'm going to talk to you about this. I might even, create a punishment at home as well if I feel appropriate.
Right.
But this doesn't define you for me. I see the best in you. I know that you're just not quite there yet. This is
Yeah.
in progress. Yeah.
This is a very good point where we're kind of getting at the root cause, what kind of
Mhm.
led to the disciplinary action. And we've already highlighted several different ways that, a child can quote unquote misbehave or get brought to the attention of either the teacher or the principal, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I have a story where one of my children, it wasn't like this. It wasn't just being funny or wasn't just impulse control or talking too much, where it was actually kind of in the realm of frustration and disrespect, where
Mm.
one of my children got detention once. He was in high school and they went on a field trip to a museum. And the field trip was very poorly organized. The
Mm.
buses got lost, the groups were not together, and the kids, high school kids in the field trip were meant to kind of stand outside of the museum while the teachers were trying to organize. And this
Yeah.
is my son's story, right? Like this
Right,
is
right,
his
right,
version.
right.
And while they're standing outside, it starts raining
Mm.
on them, and they're still making them stay outside in the rain.
Mm.
So I think it was just kind of like a frustrating moment for my child where it was like, a little bit of disrespect for how difficult the teachers are trying to organize
Yeah.
and just getting rained on and frustrated. And then then they went into the museum, finally organized and went into the museum. And while they're in the museum, my son is squeaking his sneakers because he is soaking wet,
Oh,
like
yes.
sloshy wet, and just
Yeah.
kind of squeaking his sneakers in the museum, which, was deemed as disrespectful. And him and his friend group were all given detention.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Different.
this is somewhat of a setup in other settings of
Yes.
why kids may get detention or school discipline, because they are frustrated and they, potentially act out in some way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I actually had a story like that with a child that had to go to the nurse's office. The nurse was out and he was told to just sit outside the office, and he sat outside for like 30 minutes, and he just reached this point. He describes reaching this point of anxiety, frustration,
Mhm.
alone, and he kind of acted out in a way that got their attention, but
Right.
also got him a, school discipline, right?
Right.
But it was that combo of, okay, I hear you. Like that's not the best response, but I can appreciate why this happened.
Right.
You know?
And I think as parents, just taking a little bit of time out to understand, what are the causes that led to the behavior, whether or not
Yeah.
it's just impulse control, class clown, or some sort of frustration. I think that's important for parents to try to figure out when determining what's going on. And in our household, we are also very respectful of those that discipline us, and
Yeah.
we we, take the punishment and do the right thing, right?
Yes, I have told my children before. I appreciate that you think that this punishment was too strong for what happened, but
Mhm.
that's not your judgment call.
Right.
They're
Right.
in authority, and you're going to respect it.
Right. Yeah. So this has been
Enlightening.
enlightening experience of listening to both ours and our children's school disciplinary stories. I think maybe in the second half, we should focus on the parenting, advice for parents and what we should do if we're faced with this problem with our own children.
Sounds great. So tell me, if I come in as a parent and I have a child who's tends to be acting out at school, how would you counsel me as a parent?
Sure. Sometimes it's a one-time occurrence, especially in middle school, late elementary. They're trying out different things, they're testing their boundaries, and there's like a one-time punishment or a one-time consequence. I think parents should maybe have
Right.
a family discussion about what happened and what expectations are in school. Just a brief discussion, right?
Yeah, actually, I feel like it's a great opportunity for a parent to establish open communication with your child. I'm willing to hear you out in a non-judgmental way, establish the importance of authority and being respectful at school, even if you disagree, and also establish a little bit of parental authority of, okay, I've heard your case, and now I'm going to make a decision on whether or not there needs to be anything else at home or if what they're doing at school is sufficient.
Right. And I think part of it is also, especially in the late elementary, early middle school area, to focus them in on being aware of what else is going on. This is funny for you, or this is funny for your group, or for me, this was a time to chat with my friend. But how are other people seeing that behavior? Like a little bit of
Absolutely.
perspective, right?
Oh, such a good point. A teaching opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, for our children. Yeah.
But for the child that comes in with a repetitive pattern of school discipline, I really start to think as a pediatrician, is there something else that can be addressed? Are we missing something here with the child? For example, does the child have a diagnosis of ADHD, having impulse control issues that lead them to getting in trouble a lot? Is the child really frustrated with school and teachers because of a learning disability or a trouble learning? And then the frustration is leading to the action, to kind of spend a moment to see if there's anything that could be addressed. Sometimes children that are really depressed will tend to be very triggered. They can suddenly lash out in an appropriate way. And to make sure that we're not missing another diagnosis that actually can be diagnosed and treated, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, as a pediatrician, but also as a parent, I have had these scenarios come up. I've talked about ADHD, right? I have experience in special education as a parent, but I've had these scenarios come up on this micro level where, oh, that wasn't a good choice because of your impulse control, or, oh, you got so frustrated because what was being taught in class was so frustrating for you. And that's why you made this bad choice to speak out of
Act
turn,
out, right,
act
right.
out. And also that scenario of you had so much anxiety about being at school, and this was a way for you to get out of the classroom. Like you
Right.
needed to do something to get out of the classroom because you were trying to mitigate this anxiety that you didn't know how to deal with. I have experienced all of that. And I think it's so important. This is a great point to make for parents to really think about their child, to talk to their child and see if there's any of these scenarios that are contributing to a behavior.
Yeah, for
I have
sure.
another point about this, and that's that when I see parents that are having these types of issues with their school-aged or above child, as a parent, I really work hard to make sure the school feels like we are partnering together.
Yes.
So part of the way I do that is, obviously, we've said this before, I demonstrate for my child that I'm very respectful to the school. I'm very appreciative of the time that they're putting in. We want to try to encourage them that they're a really important piece in helping the child overcome this difficulty that they're having.
Right.
I would encourage parents, if you have a child with ADHD or a learning disability, that you're proactively saying, hey guys, I need your help. I'm trying at home. But if you see this behavior come out and you think it's from frustration, from whatever it is related to the classroom, if you would just be reminding this child, like, hey, there's other ways to express your emotions or whatever, it would really help me. Like, I really appreciate what you're doing. You have so much time with them during the day. Just stating that again and again, that appreciation and awareness of the school for helping.
Yeah, and
child.
creating teamwork between you and the teachers and the administrator.
Yeah.
I think one of the more difficult things that I've seen, the situation that leads to the pattern of discipline, is when it's related to social reasons,
Hmm.
where possibly bullying or cliques or not fitting in.
I think of more in the adolescent nature, that kind of poor decision making where
Yeah,
like I want to fit in, and I fit in with this group that is making poor decisions, and we
right.
are going to continue to do that because I will continue to fit in. Oh, man.
That's tough. I mean, we've been there, right, as parents, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that part of the counsel is to have your child acknowledge that. Sometimes when they're in the social situation, they don't see that as being a cause, but to kind of begin to understand there is a choice here, and to try to help guide our children towards, is this important to you? Think about the consequences of potential disciplinary action, and then try to make some good choices here, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is interesting because in conclusion, what we're basically saying is that school discipline opens up opportunities for so many of these parenting principles, some of which we've hit on in previous episodes and some of which we will come to. Like, just to rattle a few off, we talked about this idea of obviously trying to understand what triggered the behavior in your
Mhm,
child.
mhm.
Was it a frustration like you described with the poorly planned field trip where they stood out in the rain? Was it just pure impulsivity and there's not that level of maturity yet and they weren't thinking? Was it anxiety around being in school because of a learning disability or because of bullying, so they needed an escape route and the
Right.
behavior was the way to do it? And really trying to counsel your child through that. We talked about this principle of teaching our children to respect authority.
Yeah.
Almost any time I've gotten called by the school, which almost has always been for talking out of turn with my extroverted children, the first thing I ask is, was it silly or was it disrespectful?
Right.
Because those are two different things in my mind. I can appreciate you were laughing and having fun and you were talking like you were doing in the auditorium and you weren't even thinking about it. That's very different than speaking out of turn in a disrespectful way. Like, I want
Mhm.
to understand that. And then I also want to use this as a chance to talk about respect to authority, even if sometimes as an adult, I don't agree with decisions other adults that are in authority over me are making. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
We talked about this idea of seeing the school as a partner, as an advocate. We demonstrate to our children respect for authority by the way we approach the school. And we want to acknowledge how hard they're working, how hard their job is. So I want to acknowledge that with them and create more of like, we're a team working together. I'm going to try to help you. I know you're trying to help my child at the school. We talked about this idea of a parent-child mismatch, right?
Right.
Like my kids have gotten in trouble for things that I would never have dreamed of doing. That understanding that we are different than our children. And
Mhm.
sometimes this becomes like a really big rift of, I would never get in trouble. Why are you getting in trouble?
Right. Right. I can think of highlighting some other episodes that we've done, the gentle parenting technique, instead of just unilaterally punishing, like, let's talk about it. I want to hear your side. Have your children have a voice, that you are on their team as well. You
Yeah.
listen to what they think the scenario was. If there was something that was they perceived as unjust or frustrating,
Mhm.
you want to hear your child out like the gentle parent, yet still being firm in, yes, we need to do this punishment. No, I don't expect you to behave this way again.
Yes. Yes.
And also the teenage decision making. Put
Mm.
some ownership as you progress late middle school into high school. There are decisions that are being made by our children here,
Oh,
and
yeah.
kind of encourage them to evaluate a situation, make some decisions for themselves. How
Mhm.
am I going to behave and how am I going to act? And what are the consequences if I don't? Right. So,
Right. Right.
this kind of delves into some previous episodes that we've done in helping to communicate and guide our children. Right.
That's a good point.
Well, hopefully, we've given listeners a little bit of a start. Like, what do I do as a parent? Where to begin? And a way to think about how to handle school discipline as a parent.
It's been thought provoking.
This is 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank.
And I'm Dr. Vivian Carlin. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.